I will give you the quick version of their bios. All the way on the far end here, we have Tim Philippo. He's product strategy and cross-car line manager. Tim is product strategy and cross-car line manager for Jaguar Land Rover. In his role, he manages cross-car line product functions, including powertrain, connected car, and driver assistance systems. He also oversees strategy and implementation for all items that touch across JLR's multiple model lines. Nolan Shenaiof is corporate counsel for Jaguar Land Rover. Before joining, Nolan was in a private practice in Philadelphia where he provided legal guidance to young and growing technology companies. At JLR, among other responsibilities, Nolan is responsible for providing legal support to the company's open source technology centers and other in-vehicle infotainment development. In particular, Nolan works closely with Jaguar Land Rover's Portland, Oregon operations, which includes JLR's Innovation Incubator, the purpose of which is to encourage, promote, and support new software-based automotive technologies being built and developed by U.S. technology startups. We'll keep it general to start here. Let's talk a little bit about technology in the auto industry. Specifically, for anyone who doesn't know in the room, there's a lot of talk about mobility. Mobility, can you just start by defining what that means and what's taking place in your industry around that term?
Yeah, we're trying to decide who takes this hot potato. Mobility is one of those buzzwords that you hear a lot in the automotive space, and it really defines, I want to say, getting people from A to B outside of traditional car ownership. I think that's really how one would define mobility. So is that shared rides? Is that multimodal transportation? What kind of new technology can we use to enable people to continue to get where they need to go? Because that's really ultimately what we're providing is literally mobility, getting people from place to place.
Okay, and I guess I saw some research conducted, I think it was in 2015, around the future of connected mobility, and the majority of these experts that were polled said that tech companies are actually going to challenge the traditional OEMs in the marketplace, such as yourselves. Can you speak to this? I mean, do you think this is a truth? How much truth is it to this?
So I think the truth is actually somewhere in between. I think that car companies as conservative manufacturing companies for a long time ignored tech to some degree. And tech came in with automotive technology. I mean, you see Google's self-driving car, you see what Tesla's doing in the market. And I think that the future direction of the industry is probably that OEMs have to become in large part tech companies, and any tech company that wants to be an entrant into the market probably needs to become a traditional manufacturer as well. And so I think the companies that do it successfully are going to be the companies that are able to draw from the successful elements of the manufacturing base and from a technology base.
So the tech companies aren't going to try a takeover, it's more of a collaboration. You think it's going to be an effort between the two that's really going to be what's going to win out?
Well, I think that technology and when you look at the rapid development that technology has been going through in recent memory as well as in kind of over the past 30, 40 years, it's incredible to see the evolution of technology. But what's also really difficult that I think people overlook is that it's really, really hard to build a car. And I think that if a tech company overlooks the actual mechanical engineering that goes into a car, you can have the best software offering that one can offer in a vehicle, but if the car doesn't actually work and it doesn't last and it doesn't run well and it's not reliable, it's not dependable, then the technology, you basically have a massive iPod that sits on your driveway that doesn't work.
It's an incredibly capital-intensive business, and you'd have to be an idiot, honestly, to burn your money if you were Apple to go and decide, I'm going to build a car factory, I'm going to start making cars. That's not where the money is. That's not where the profit is for them, right? The easy part is actually probably the software, and even Tesla's powertrain is not that difficult. The really hard part is getting your doors to seal so they don't leak in the rain. That's the really difficult part of making a car, and that takes a certain amount of expertise.
You would never think that was the thing you'd say. So what do you, just more generally, the auto industry right now, where do you think it's heading in terms of technology? What's hot right now? What's on top of mind for JLR, and kind of where are you fighting to keep market share as far as technology goes with your vehicles?
It's interesting because people have accused the automotive industry of being kind of laggards in the area of technology, and I really don't think that's fair. I think, like any business, I think automotive has been very keen on technology because anything that we see that gives us a competitive advantage is something that we're going to pursue as hard as we can. What's interesting, though, is when it comes to technology in the automotive space, we do have to be a little more conservative, right? There are car companies out there that have a 10-year warranty. Now, what's the warranty on your iPhone? Right? I don't think it's 10 years. I don't think you can name an app that's been around for 10 years, right? So being able to continue to serve that customer for so long and recognizing that there are people inside your product, right, forces a certain amount of conservatism, and that to the outside that makes us look slow, but I think on the inside what we're being is careful. So we're very keen to adopt the technology that we see enhancing the driving experience, but there's a lot of technology that people are trying to put into the car that is distracting to the driving experience, or that really maybe doesn't belong inside an automobile. So you asked what's hot. I think what's hot is being part of the Internet of Things, right? The phone, of course, is going to be the center of your life. So how can your car integrate with your phone? How can your car help you to talk to your house when you're away? So your lights come on when you're 5 miles from home, the air conditioning turns on when you're 10 miles from home, that your car tells you that your refrigerator is empty and you need to pick up, beer and milk on the way home. Those are the kind of connections that we want to make.
And I think that ultimately having a seamless connection between, and a seamless cadence between the things that you're traditionally used to using on your phone, that when you get into your car, start to work in your car, obviously subject to the same caveats that Tim just mentioned about distracted driving. But having that cadence, I think, is probably where people, especially, I know we're going to get to it shortly, but on the point of self-driving cars, as cars become increasingly autonomous on the road, and it's not just the concept of getting into a car and having it take you from point A to point B without you working the accelerator or the brake, but it's also as features within your car start to become more automation friendly, forward distance monitors when you have your speed control on, for instance. When you can kind of be more on autopilot, you're going to be more aware that you're not actively, you should always be actively driving, but you're not actively driving in the sense of that we all think of. And so you will start to think about, well, I wish I could just push a button and have my Spotify playlist come on, or, the kind of seamless transition between your devices and the mobile platforms within which you operate, I think is the direction that technology is headed.
Well, we know consumers all want that. They want that seamless experience. But what is holding, maybe I'm the only one in the room that feels this way, but the interfaces, the infotainment, and the connected device capabilities of vehicles right now are really bad. I mean, from what I can tell, it's one area where the vehicles seem, we're talking so much about technology in vehicles, but it feels like it's 10, 15 years behind. What is holding your industry back?
Well, I think that and this is something that we've talked about at length. The problem is that you have every single automaker that has created or that is creating and that is contributing to different systems that cross different vehicle lines. And so one of the ways that the auto industry, and specifically JLR, is working to address the interface, which is always a problem and is a problem across, I would say, most automakers, is to create an open source platform, which the Geneva Alliance, which JLR is a part of, is in the process and has been pushing out an open source platform. And Geneva, for instance, is a consortium of several different OEMs, tier one suppliers like Intel, and software providers as well, where the concept is that if you have an open source platform that's available to, and that's used on a large number of vehicles in the same way that that you have an iPhone, that development of technology on that platform can occur faster. Fixes and repairs and patches to that technology can be pushed out faster, and the interface can operate more like a traditional tech device that people are used to using. And the biggest part to combat is the fact that every OEM has a different system. So if you put everybody, or if you put the lion's share of automakers onto an integrated open source system, it will address some of the lagging issues that have plagued the auto industry.
And I also think there's a hint of perception bias in the question, actually, because we're like, well, doesn't everybody want this? And everybody in this room probably wants it because we all have a tech focus. J.D. Power just did a study. They do an annual study called the Drive Study that shows actually, no, they don't actually want it. Consumers, when asked about, do you want Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, they're like, meh, not really. Power, style is more important to them, right? So we need to make sure it works for the people who want it, but we still need to have a relatively simple interface for the people that don't want to engage with it. But we have struggled with trying to make an interface that is appropriate for use in an automobile. You can't just stick an iPhone on the dashboard of your car, because that's fine when you're sitting at your desk or not moving. But we've all seen the they're calling them the mombies, the mobile zombies, that are walking down the street, texting, doing stuff on their phone. If you can't walk and use your phone at the same time, we certainly don't expect you to drive and use your phone at the same time. So you have to change that user experience and make it appropriate for a vehicle, which in some levels means kind of simplifying it, dumbing it down, right? So we have a system called In Control Apps, which has been on the market for about 2 years now. It's kind of like an Apple CarPlay, Android Auto-like system. It's device agnostic. It works on both. And so you plug your phone in, and because we have touchscreens in our cars, we can mirror the touchscreen on your phone. But there are only certain apps that we let you use in that system, because not every app is appropriate for automotive use, right? So I really want to be able to play Angry Birds while I'm stuck in traffic, but they said, no, not a good idea, right? But navigation, travel, entertainment, news, those are the kind of things that are appropriate for use in an automobile where you do have to keep your eyes on the road. So it's working in kind of steps to get there where you need to go. You can't you really just can't put an iPhone on there and expect someone to drive and do that at the same time.
Makes sense. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk a little bit about. There we go. So I think Jaguar's known for the driving experience, and Land Rover more for the off-road ability, and they're core to kind of the overall company's identity right now. How do you keep those relevant in the self-driving future? Let's talk about that.
Everybody is kind of envisioning 5 years from now we're all just going to have transportation pods that whisk us around. It's not going to happen in that time frame. We're not even close. It's a lot farther off than the press would have you believe. There's a lot of technological challenges that need to be overcome before then. So we have a lot of time between now and then, and probably 30 years or more before there's a critical mass of vehicles. But it's something that we need to think about. And ultimately what it comes down to for us is brand. Our customers are probably going to be less interested in sharing an automobile, right? There's already a shared economy for a lot of things. Let's say your washing machine, right? There is a great shared economy. There are laundromats that you can go to where you don't have to invest in this infrastructure. You can go and do your laundry someplace in a community shared model. You'd be hard pressed to find any Jaguar Land Rover customer that goes to a laundromat, right? They like having their own stuff, right? And they don't necessarily like sharing. So I don't think they're going to participate in the sharing economy aspect. So when they have a self-driving car, it's probably going to be one that they own themselves. And when they do, the brand really matters, right? You go into a shoe store, shoes are essentially a commodity. There's something you put on your feet and you walk around, but we're willing to spend, hundreds of dollars to get shoes that set us apart. For better or for worse, brands define who we are. We use brands to define who we are. So you're going to want to have the luxury of a Jaguar or the capability of a Land Rover. A Range Rover can ford 2.5 feet of water. That's a function that most consumers are never actually going to use when they have one, but they like knowing that they can. So they're going to want to have the self-driving car that they know can get them to their mountaintop retreat in the wintertime so they can go skiing, that they can, pick up the kids, that it's going to have that utility and that function. So even if they're not the one necessarily behind the wheel, if there even is a wheel, I think the brand and what that intangible benefit offers is going to be important to these people still.
And I also think that to add on to that, that day when self-driving cars have hit a critical mass is going to be a day when people pay much more attention, I think, to the appointment of the interiors of their car, the comfort of their cars. And when you're always sitting in traffic, when you're stressed, when you're cursing out the guy in front of you, you're not so worried about the quality of the seat that you're sitting on. But when you're sitting on a chair and you're being whisked around town, the chair that you're sitting on all of a sudden becomes a lot more important to you.
And you're on, I hate to say, you're still going to want to impress your friends with your ride, right? So when you're taking your friends out to dinner in your self-driving car, you're going to want them to sit and go, ooh, feel that leather. Yeah, it's still going to matter. There's still going to be a sensory luxury experience for our customers.
Okay, and I was telling you, Tim, earlier, my grandfather always would talk about Jaguar, and that's how I remember the brand. I'm thinking about the younger customer, and I know you reach the younger customer more with the Land Rover brand, but with this push into technology, how much is that a result of you wanting to reach a younger audience, specifically with the Jaguar brand, I guess?
Yeah, first and foremost for a young customer is price. So we have to address that first. And we're introducing it just in a week or two. Our new Jaguar XC and F-Pace are going to go on sale. The XC starts mid $30,000 range. It's going to open us a whole new category of customers. So that's the key. The first key is having something they can afford. If you're young, you're probably not going to be able to afford a $90,000 Jaguar F-Type, unless you're working for a tech startup, in which case I'll give you my card. So price is the key, and then I think once you've gotten past that barrier, then I think you can start to wow them with the technology. It was Take Your Kids to Work Day last week, and so we asked the kids, what do you want in your next car, or actually really in their first car, in their parents' car. In addition to jetpacks and trampolines in the back seat, it was pretty standard tech stuff. Like, I want Wi-Fi. I want to be able to connect. I want TVs in the back seat. I want to be able to plug my game system in, right? I don't think it's a mystery what is going to attract people. I think the key is going to be the person who can execute it the best and at a price that is affordable to someone who's coming out of college with a ridiculous amount of debt.
Yeah, and I think the point that Tim raised earlier is that car companies do have to walk a pretty fine line, because you do have younger customers who are excited about the technology offerings that vehicles are starting to come out with. But at the same time, you have older customers, and in some cases your core customers, who are not particularly swayed by those elements of the car and want a simple interface that they can use. So the technology that's in a car has to be both capable but also easy to use and easy to navigate. So it is a fine line that automakers do have to walk, because you don't want to go exclusively after young customers and alienate your older customers or your less tech savvy customers, or vice versa.
Okay. I want to move on to be more specific about JLR now, as far as what you're currently doing, and how you're bringing new technology to the core of the company. My first question, I want to get to this incubator, and I want you to tell me what JLR is doing with this incubator out in Portland, and why is that different from just a regular tech incubator?
Sure. So Jaguar Land Rover, in, I guess it was January of this year, entered its first class into its technology incubator in Portland. And for a car company, and for a company that's looking for new technological offerings that we can offer to our customers that we can use to improve our vehicles, access to technology is our biggest priority when it comes to our incubator. And so the Portland incubator is is taking in classes of 3 to 4 companies every quarter of the year. And what it does is that in exchange for those companies sharing with JLR their know-how, their software platforms and things like that, so that JLR can learn from that, and that those companies can assist JLR with the actual development of production technology. In exchange for that, we extended the companies in a traditional incubator format. We extended them some money to assist them with their growth as a company. But where we differ from a traditional VC incubator is that we also provide them with engineering support. So we have JLR employed engineers who are available essentially full-time for companies to be able to use to develop whatever products they're working on exclusively for themselves. And so what it does is that, I mean, for tech startups, one of your biggest costs and one of your biggest capital draws is employees. And for a period of 4 to 6 months, depending on how long they choose to stay in the incubator, they essentially, in most instances, have 2 full-time engineers exclusively devoted to their development of their technology. And so the JLR incubator, from our perspective, we think it's a good opportunity for JLR to get access to new technology and to see where the market is headed. Because that's, I mean, being able to get a barometer of the tech market is one of the hardest things for a company to do, because the tech market and the preferences and predilections of customers is changing so rapidly that being able to have the kind of weather vane or barometer of where the industry is heading, what technology consumers are looking at, and what innovative people are looking at to be the next step in existing technology is, I think, where the future of automotive technology is really going to be made.
So give me an example of, highlight one of the companies that's come through the incubator.
Right, so we have a company, the name of the company is Park-It. And what they do is that they take existing infrastructure within parking garages to use the existing cameras that are in parking garages to identify open spots in that garage, and then interface, hopefully, once the technology is perfected, but interface with your vehicle to direct you to that open spot in the parking garage. Now, what exists currently and what's on the market, you know, if you've gone to an airport, you'll see that when you pull into the parking garage, you'll see, 6 green spots and 250 red spots, and then you have to drive down that aisle to look for the open spot. The downside to that system is that they're incredibly expensive, which is why you only see them on buildings that were funded by the government. But they're also really cumbersome to install. Here, using existing security cameras, the interface will be able to direct your car to an open spot. That's one example. And another example, and this is where I think the incubators is particularly useful to JLR, where when people think of cars and in-car technology, they think of almost exclusively, well, what kind of technology will interface with your car and allow you to drive better or enhance your driving experience? But one of the companies in the incubator is a company called Babybit, which is a wearable monitor company for children, where if your child's temperature or heartbeat or any vital signs appear to be impaired, that obviously you have an app on your phone where notifications are pushed to your phone, but if you put your purse in the back seat, or if you've left your phone even at home, the notifications are pushed directly to your car. So you think about it as wearable biometric monitoring for a child and automotive technology. You would think that those Venn diagrams don't overlap at all, where in fact these are the types of things where that seamless interaction and transition between home, mobile device and car are important, because you don't want to have to think, well, maybe my push notifications are only going to one of my devices, but instead they're actually going to all of your devices, including your vehicle.
So it's definitely not an equity play here at all. I mean, you guys, really what you're looking for is access to new technologies. You want to be informed, and then, I mean, looking at the scenario, then it becomes something that you roll in, and it's your proprietary technology in the future, correct?
Right. So, I mean, obviously there's an equity component in a traditional incubator sense. But I think what you would find compared to a traditional venture equity model is that the equity that corporate incubators generally take is lower than what a venture incubator would take. And the reason for that is exactly what we've been talking about. It's the benefit that companies get from access to technology.
Okay, so for a tech founder, developer, in the crowd here, what kind of advice do you have? Like, talk more about the open source. What do they have access to, and how can they get connected and potentially become part of your incubator?
I think the first piece of advice even is solve a problem, right? It's identify a need. And again, don't just think about the way that you use cars, because everyone's like, oh yeah, Uber is the future. It is amongst your group of friends, but the majority of America doesn't live where you live, right? So think about the people who are using cars and what are the problems that they have. In urban areas, they're having problems parking. At a suburban shopping mall, probably less so. So what is the problem that you can solve there? There's another technology that we're working with where you can actually get packages delivered to the trunk of your car at your office, right? So you order something on Amazon, instead of having it sit on your doorstep in front of your house, the UPS guy shows up at your car in the parking lot and throws it in your trunk using a one-time digital key, right? So that's a problem that's going to be unique to more of a suburban customer, not an urban customer who lives in a doorman building, right? So think about a need and how you can solve it. It really is it's a needs-based business. And then it's getting access to our startup, working with people in Portland. I think that will help you kind of bring out the best way to integrate that into an automobile. Not every idea works, and the majority, as you guys know, won't. The car you see on the screen there is a beautiful example of a wonderful dead end. The CX-75 concept car, it is a hybrid electric, but instead of a piston engine, it has two shoebox-sized micro-turbine jet engines in it. We thought it was a jet-powered supercar. It's highly efficient. It's very low emissions. The problem is your exhaust comes out at about 2,000 degrees. And how do you manage that is a bit of a challenge. But we believed in the technology so much that we bought Blade & Jets, the company that made the turbines. And so there's going to be a place for that technology, but it's probably not going to be in a moving object at ground level.
And I think practically speaking, and this is wearing the lawyer hat. Practically speaking, when you are looking at incubators, whether it's VC, corporate, JLR, it's important to make sure that you have invested early on in your company in getting your kind of corporate house in order, because the first thing that any venture or corporate incubator is going to ask for are things like your bylaws, your operating agreements, and the impression that a good set of corporate documents for your company makes is tremendous. And if you're competing with other companies to enter an incubator looking like you have your stuff together, proverbial stuff, it is a significant benefit to you as your company. And I would say the other piece of that is also to make sure that you always have an updated capitalization table ready to go to share with a venture firm, private equity, incubator, angel investor, because that's another one of their kind of top three things that the second they have any interest in your company, they're going to look at your cap table and making sure that your cap table is accurate, understanding dilution, all of those fantastic things that go into a cap table are things that are going to set you apart from any other company that is of your age and sophistication when you're looking to enter into a VC, angel, or incubator deal.
So it's not just how cool your idea is then.
Yeah, unfortunately, Nolan is the downer here. Yeah, you got to run it like a business.
But that's the thing, though. A cool enough idea will make a company work.
You can help them, basically.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, absolutely.
Makes sense. So I want to open it up to the crowd here. Please, we want some questions. What's the future?
future of the insurance companies with the self-driving cars?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of, I was about to use the word disruption, and I hate that word. There are a lot of industries that are about to be changed for better or for worse by self-driving cars, and insurance is definitely one of them. I think there's this false belief that a self-driving car is never going to have an incident on the road. There will still be mechanical failure. There'll be hacking. You'll still blow a tire. You're still going to run into a deer. So there's going to be a need for insurance, and you also, if you think about how long it's going to take for self-driving cars to become prevalent, literally that critical mass is so long from now. The average age of a car on the road in the U.S. is 11 years old right now. So if you think about how long it's going to take to cycle all that inventory out, even if self-driving cars were available today, it's a long process. So even if you have a self-driving car and you think you're impervious to damage, there's still going to be someone that doesn't, and that's going to hit you. And that's the thing about insurance, is it's selling you on that potential that you hope never happens, and they're masterful salesmen at that, right? So they're going to sell you the life insurance, the homeowner's insurance, the rental insurance, but it's going to change. And I think what's going to be really interesting is, even before we get to self-driving cars, we're seeing today a lot of cars collecting data, and customers willingly give that data. And I think that's going to be the interim shift, that their actuaries are going to be able to identify driving trends and assess your risk level to a much more accurate degree. So that means if you are a terrible driver, your rates are going to go up, but if you're a good driver, your rates are going to go down. So they're, in that respect, they're kind of disrupting themselves already. But I think you're still going to want to insure your self-driving car. It'll still get stolen, you know. I'm gonna let the legal expert answer that one.
Well, I mean, I think the big question is who's going to pay for insurance when self-driving cars are commonplace, and that's, I think, to be seen. I think that there is going to be an element of risk that's going to have to be placed both with the OEM, with the driver, and probably with the insurance company as well. And I think that it's going to be an incredibly difficult challenge when you are reaching that critical mass, when certain cars are self-driving, certain cars are not. But with an entirely self-driving fleet, you know, who pays for that risk and who insures over that risk is a big question. And I don't think we've seen any clear guidance in either direction, because, I mean, your standard personal injury lawyers and people who are looking for fault on the part of the roads, it's going to be a complete shift in that industry as well, because all of a sudden you're not going to have driver error, or potentially not have driver error as the cause of a lion's share of accidents. You're going to have, you know, perhaps automotive companies and their algorithms being a cause of an accident, in which case, you know, you're not going after an insurance company's pocket, you're going potentially after an automaker's pocket, or a device maker's pocket, or, you know, somebody who has corporate pockets to go after. So I think the industry is going to see a big shift, and there's going to be a lot of risk analysis going back and forth. I think it's probably a good time to be in risk management, though.
So going back to kind of your original point about your brand, and your goal is really to help people get from point A to point B, and how technology can function in that. Like, how far away are we from the car being able to communicate with, like, businesses that are actually out in the world, like through a navigation system, say, like if you're running low on gas and your car tells you and then reroutes you to the nearest gas station, knowing exactly how much you have left in your tank. Is that kind of stuff that's being worked on right now, or?
Yeah, some of the most exciting stuff to me is the vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, where vehicles can be able to talk to each other. So if there's a patch of ice that one car encounters on the road, it will let all the cars behind it know. But in terms of, even today, if you put a destination into a Jaguar Land Rover navigation system and you don't have enough gas to get you there, it will tell you that, and it will help you get to a gas station along the way. So a lot of that kind of integration is happening. I think some of the more interesting stuff is also going to be as it connects to other parts of your life. I think I mentioned before, that your refrigerator will be able to tell you that you need to pick up milk on the way home. that kind of stuff, I think we're really on the verge of that stuff happening. Probably the biggest holdup is that cars typically work on a 4 to 8 year life cycle. So getting the next logical change point. So I think the devices are becoming more capable of it. If you went to CES, you saw, refrigerators with 27-inch flat screens on them that can, read the barcodes of everything inside. Consumer electronics will be there first, but I think we're going to be there. I think we're going to be right behind. And then it's a matter of, I think, figuring out what do people actually use, because it sounds like a cool idea, but if it turns out that no one actually wants their refrigerator connected to the internet, we'll see how that goes.
And I think that also one of the other things that's going to hold this up significantly, even once the technology is perfected, is that the government, from a retail side and from an automaker side, is all over beacon technology. And as long as the government has has the bullseye on beacon technology, the disclosures and the amount of requirements to meet regulatory approvals that both retailers, financial companies, and car makers are going to have to go through to get that technology approved in a format that can be made available to customers is going to be pretty significant. So, I think the regulatory aspect is, if I had to guess, would probably be one of the other main hurdles to actually getting it implemented.
It used to be when you bought a car, you got your keys and got to drive away, but now before we give you the keys, you have to sign terms and conditions. It's a brave new world.
We'll take one more question. You had one?
I was just interested to get your thoughts on the conflict between autonomous cars from the likes of Jaguar and Land Rover that are fundamentally engaging and enjoyable to drive, and then being autonomous. And it takes away the experience of having high quality suspension and all that sort of stuff, and enjoying a backcountry road if you're just sitting back. And then a second question, we spoke a lot about the digital side of technology in cars, but where do you see the mechanical element going with the hybrid engines? Like, you see the petrol engine being obsolete in a few years, kind of what's going on the mechanical side of things?
I'll do the second one first. Where is powertrain technology going is a really important question. There was a great article that was on Bloomberg recently about what's the tipping point for oil. When does oil go? When does the industry crash because electrics take over? What I think a lot of people are missing in this discussion is that it's not a free market. It's not a free economy when it comes to powertrain technology. The government is pushing and mandating a certain amount of technology. So there's going to come a point where if you want to sell cars in California, 25% of your fleet has to be zero emissions vehicles. And that means either electric or hydrogen. And the problem is there's not a market for it when gas is $1.89 a gallon. So there's a lot of amazing technology that's going into powertrains. 48-volt electrical systems are really going to put another burst of life into internal combustion engines. The range that we're seeing out of electric vehicles is steadily growing. Hybrid technology is becoming a lot more efficient. But what customers ultimately want is a cheap car, a car that can get them from point A to point B. And right now, gasoline is the most economical way for people to get from point A to point B. Customers, they're not necessarily working out a spreadsheet of the cost of ownership, but they can gauge that, if gas is $1.89 a gallon, I'm going to buy the bigger car because I can. So we will have this electric future, but it's going to be more of a push onto the market than a pull from customers. And I think that's going to be a challenge because you're going to see probably in the next 5 years, just about everybody is going to have a hybrid or an electric. So it's going to be a very crowded marketplace for a very small group of customers. So the innovation from an engineering standpoint is fascinating. The marketing equation, on the other hand, is that's what's going to keep us up at night. And then your first question was?
Just on the conflict of building high performance and engaging cars and expecting people just to sit back and let them do their thing.
Yeah, it's the question is about creating an engaging self-driving car and having that brand be relevant. It's going to be a while before we have a fully autonomous vehicle, and I think the ability for the driver to take over when they get to that interesting back road. I love driving, but I came here from Manhattan this afternoon. There's really nothing enjoyable about Interstate 95. So I would have been more than happy to have the car take over and to sit back and relax while that happened. But At the same time, I still want a car that's going to ride like a Jaguar, have the interior appointment of a Range Rover, and so that kind of brand aspect has become very important. It'll be possible to make a generic pod, and it will probably be inexpensive, but it's going to be compromised in terms of the materials used. It's going to smell like plastic. It's not going to smell like leather. It's going to have a suspension that isn't exactly compliant. There's still going to be a marketplace for people that are willing to have something nicer and something better. When you look at a lot of the things that we need or that we buy, they're always above and beyond what we need. And so that level of luxury, because that is the definition of luxury, right? Luxury is by definition unnecessary. So in which, toilet paper is a necessity, right? But if something is unnecessary, that's a luxury. So there's still going to be a market for luxury goods, and that's where you have to differentiate yourself by going above and beyond and giving the customer more.
And you think about it, on a daily basis. Your point exactly. When you're sitting on 95 and you move an hour, you move a mile in an hour, you're not experiencing the engine of your Jaguar or the off-road capability of your Land Rover, and presumably, one of the biggest benefits I think of autonomous vehicles is that the vehicle-to-vehicle communication will prevent, in large part, a lot of the traffic that you see on the roads today. So, minimizing the time that you're in the car for your everyday mundane drives, I think will actually incentivize people to use their cars when they have weekends to go out and go off-roading or to go to a speed track, because they're not so tired from sitting in their cars for hours in traffic during the week. So, I think there's an argument, and it's to be seen if it's valid yet, but I think there's an argument that when you don't drive your car during the week and you're just essentially shuttled from point A to point B, then driving is not the exhilarating piece that it was before. So on the weekends, you take your car and you drive it up a mountain, or you take it to a speed loop and you push it to 200 miles an hour, and you actually get to enjoy your car when you're driving it.
All right, thank you. So Nolan and Tim will be hanging out for a while, I believe. So if you have other questions, feel free to approach them.